First, thank you all for being here, and maybe I will come back to Senator Cortez Masto's question and let Mark Christie answer that in the framework of a larger question. It does circle back to that dating process of local utilities. There's some question about too much local transmission without enough oversight. And I wanted just to give you a few quotes of recent meeting with you had with state regulators. Daniel's got some quotes up there. Commissioner Dutrell from Pennsylvania said, we're seeing more and more and more local projects coming before us instead of the more significant projects. Commissioner French of Kansas said they, quote, need help examining the pace of investment and whether transmission owners are making the most optimal investments, end quote. To put numbers to it, and we'll put another chart up here. It's my day for charts. From Colorado-based Rocky Mountain Institute, this chart shows the stunning rise in local transmission in our nation's largest electricity market, PJM, before and after 2013, the year PJM updated its transmission planning. All three pairs of bars show different types of local transmission as a percentage of total spending on transmission. Since 2013, you can see we've been building much more local transmission across the board. Every bit of this ends up on the ratepayers' bills at a time when everyone's hurting from the commodity prices and other increases. All the while, the development of large-scale transmission projects that I think in many cases create the greatest efficiencies on the grid, they've stalled. Within that, you can talk a little bit about
Yes, Senator, I think one of the problems with transmission spend that we have today is, as you mentioned, in the RTOs in particular, 80-some% of the spend is on what are called local projects, and they're coming out of one load-serving entity. And that's not automatically a good thing or a bad thing. But in terms of numbers, here's what happens, though. So because of you can go back many years in FERC history, but they get to come to FERC for what's called formula rate recovery. And formula rate recovery contrasts to state rate recovery. I was a state regulator for many years. Formula rate recovery is almost a plug-and-play type of process. It's very hard to challenge that. So what happens is the RTOs are really not reviewing or vetting closely the local projects, but yet they're going into a regional plan, which means they're going to be cost allocated across the RTO. Right. And then they come to FERC for cost recovery, and our formula rate mechanism is sort of an automatic, it's not much, it's very hard to challenge transmission spend there. And what's happened too is in the RTOs, several states, no doubt at the behest of lobbyists, who didn't want state regulators to take a close look, have lobbied for laws that have stripped state regulators of the authority to vet these local projects. And so what you've got is basically a situation where it's tremendously financially rewarding to build local projects because the RTOs aren't looking at them that closely. The state regulators in many states have been stripped of authority to look at them, and then they get to come to FERC and get formula rate recovery. And
so, and I'll go down the list, whether any of you, this relative ease of self-approving local transmission is coming at the expense of the larger projects. Why don't you each just take a 20 seconds or 30 seconds at that?
Thanks, Senator. I agree with most of Commissioner Christie's framing of the issue, and I've been pleased that we've been able to work together on some mechanisms that get at this issue, and I hope we can finalize some process on that front.
Great. Commissioner Danley?
So Commissioner Christie is correct, Senator, that formula rate treatment does have something to do with it. There's something else, though, which is that the more FERC attempts to establish mechanisms by which people are to plan transmission, the more strange incentives are created. And so, in part, it's an effort to get around and have easier treatment of transmission projects than our processes that we created for the purpose of improving competition, right, just like the markets. We created these processes, they create perverse incentives, and it's easier to do processes for local transmission than the big projects you're talking about. So the more FERC you get, the less transmission you get in some cases.
Right, which is regrettable. Mr. Chair?
Senator, this comes down to cost for me, and I think the cure to it is more transparency in the local process. This is exactly why we're taking this up in our regional transmission planning open.
Great, I appreciate that. And I've got 25 seconds, so I'll plan a question which well, I'm not, it's just, it would take too long. I have another regional question. I will put that in the written record amount of time. By the time I got halfway through the question, I'd already be well over it. So I'll yield back to the chair. Thank you all for being here. Really, this is very useful this morning.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.